Chosen one, listen carefully. Something inside you has been shifting. You feel it. You cannot ignore it. The world that once felt loud now feels overwhelming. Rooms filled with noise suddenly drain your energy. Conversations that once entertained you now feel hollow. You notice it more every day. Places feel heavier. People feel louder. Energy feels sharper. And deep down, you have asked yourself a quiet question. Am I losing something? Are your senses fading? Is something wrong with you? Understand this clearly. You are not losing your senses. They are stepping aside because something older, something sacred, is beginning to awaken within you. Your physical senses were designed for survival in the ordinary world, but you were never meant to remain ordinary. You were marked for perception beyond the surface. And when the divine third eye begins to awaken, something powerful happens. The noise of the outer world begins to dim. The distractions begin to fade. The illusions begin to weaken. Why? Because higher sight cannot awaken in chaos. The inner eye opens in silence. It awakens in stillness. It rises when the world's noise loses its grip on you. This is why your experience feels strange. The old way of perceiving reality is shutting down, and the world will not understand this. They will think you are withdrawing. They will think you are becoming distant, but they cannot see what is happening inside you. Only the chosen recognize this shift. Across ancient spiritual traditions, the pattern is the same. Before divine sight awakens, human senses must quiet. Before the veil lifts, the noise must fade. What feels like disconnection is actually recalibration. Your mind is reorganizing. Your awareness is rising. Your spirit is adjusting to a deeper frequency. You are moving from ordinary perception into divine awareness. And tonight you will recognize the 9 signs that your human senses are closing, so your divine third eye can activate. Not everyone will understand these signs, but if you are chosen, you will recognize them immediately. Stay with me until the final sign, because the last one reveals the moment when your perception crosses a line and the veil of illusion begins to tear. First, your tolerance for noise begins to collapse. You notice it suddenly. The world has not changed, but your reaction to it has. Crowded rooms feel unbearable. Loud conversations irritate your spirit. Chaotic environments drain you faster than they ever did before. Even background noise, television chatter, constant talking begins to exhaust you. And you may have wondered something. Why does everything suddenly feel so loud? Listen carefully. This is not weakness. This is awakening. Your consciousness is shifting. Your mind is no longer designed to process endless external stimulation. Something inside you is redirecting your attention away from noise, away from distraction, away from chaos, and towards something deeper, the inner world. Because when the third eye begins preparing to open, your nervous system begins filtering reality differently. Noise becomes interference. Chaos becomes pressure. Your spirit begins rejecting environments that drown out your inner perception. This is spiritual protection. The chosen cannot hear divine guidance in constant noise, so the soul begins pushing you away from it. You may walk into a crowded restaurant and immediately feel tension rise in your chest. Everyone else seems comfortable, but you feel overwhelmed, not because you are antisocial, because you are becoming sensitive to energy. You are beginning to feel frequencies others ignore. Your awareness is sharpening. Your spirit is becoming selective. Understand this. The world celebrates constant stimulation, but divine perception requires silence. This is why many chosen ones suddenly crave quiet spaces, late nights, empty rooms, moments alone. You are not withdrawing from life. You are being repositioned. Your senses are learning a new hierarchy. The outer world is losing its dominance, and the inner world is beginning to speak louder. The noise around you is fading, so the voice within you can rise. And once you understand this shift, something powerful happens. You stop resisting it. You stop forcing yourself into loud spaces. You begin protecting your peace, because deep down, your spirit already knows. Something sacred is awakening inside you, and this is only the beginning. Second, your hunger for shallow conversation begins to die. You notice it in quiet moments first. The same words that once passed the time now feel empty. The same jokes no longer satisfy you. The same gossip that keeps others entertained begins to wear on your spirit. You sit there. You hear the voices. You see the mouse moving. But inside, something in you pulls away. Have you felt that? Have you ever been surrounded by people and still felt completely removed from what was being said? Not because you hated them. Not because you thought you were better. Because your soul was no longer feeding on the surface. Listen carefully. This is not arrogance. This is not pride. This is not you becoming cold. This is your inner sight rejecting what cannot nourish it. When the divine third eye begins to awaken, your spirit starts craving what is real. Truth, depth, meaning, discernment. Not noise, not performance. Not empty cycles of talking that never touch the soul. And this is where many chosen ones get misunderstood. People begin to notice your silence. They ask why you seem distant, why you no longer laugh at what once amused you, why you do not engage the same way. But they do not understand what is happening. Your consciousness is shifting beyond surface-level connection. You are being trained to hear what is underneath words. You are being taught to sense what people are hiding behind smiles. You are beginning to recognize how much of this world is built on distraction. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. That is why shallow conversation feels heavy now. Because your spirit is no longer called to skim the surface. You are called to go deeper. Deeper than appearances, deeper than social performance, deeper than the mask people wear to keep truth buried. Only the chosen recognize this shift. The world calls depth uncomfortable. The chosen call it necessary. The world survives on chatter. The chosen hunger for revelation. So when you find yourself sitting among people, hearing them talk about trivial things and feeling your mind drift somewhere far beyond the room, do not condemn yourself. That distance is a sign. Your spirit is outgrowing the language of distraction. You are not broken because you cannot keep pretending. You are awakening because you no longer can. And yes, it can feel lonely, very lonely, because when your soul begins demanding substance, not everyone can go with you. Some people were assigned to your comfort. Very few are assigned to your depth. Remember that. Not everyone around you is built to meet you where your spirit is going. That is why you feel the separation. That is why ordinary exchanges now leave you drained instead of filled. Your inner eye is pulling you away from the shallow so it can train you in discernment. You are learning to value silence over emptiness, presence over performance, truth over chatter. This is favor. This is filtering. This is divine protection from wasting your energy on what cannot carry your destiny. So do not fear the loss of interest. Honor it. It is evidence that your spirit is becoming too refined for what once held you. And once that refinement begins, another shift follows. A deeper one, a stranger one, a holier one. Third, where your physical sight begins to lose its throne. Have you noticed it? You close your eyes more now. Not out of tiredness, not out of boredom, out of instinct. When you think deeply, you close your eyes. When you pray, you close your eyes. When you search for clarity, you shut out the room. Why? Because something in you already knows that what you need to see cannot be found with ordinary vision. Listen carefully. This is one of the clearest shifts of all. The outer eyes begin to step back, so the inner eye can step forward. You are taught to trust only what you can physically see. That is how the world trains people. Depend on appearances. Follow the visible. Bow to the surface. But you were never called to live at the surface. You were called beneath it, beyond it, through it. And when your divine third eye begins to awaken, your mind starts turning inward for vision. This is why there are moments when you close your eyes and suddenly something stronger appears. An image, a symbol, a warning, a flash of understanding. A scene that rises from nowhere and yet feels more real than what is in front of you. Have you felt that you shut your eyes for a moment and instead of darkness you encounter impression, you encounter movement, you encounter meaning? That is not imagination playing games with you. That is inner sight beginning to activate. Only the chosen recognize how holy this moment is, because the world thinks vision only comes through the eyes. But the chosen learn that real sight often begins when the eyes are closed. Remember this. Darkness to the natural eye does not mean darkness to the spirit. In fact, for the chosen, external darkness often becomes the backdrop for internal revelation. That is why stillness has become so important to you. That is why silence has become so necessary. That is why you sometimes withdraw just to hear what cannot speak through noise. Your outer sight pauses, your inner screen comes alive, and at first this can unsettle you. You may wonder why you cannot focus the same way others do. Why staring harder at the outside world no longer gives you answers. Why closing your eyes gives you more clarity than opening them. It is because your perception is being upgraded. You are being moved from observation into discernment, from looking into knowing, from reacting to appearances into reading what is hidden behind them. This is favor. The enemy works through illusion, through distraction, through the manipulation of surfaces. But once your inner sight begins opening, darkness loses one of its greatest weapons. Because you stop being fooled by what things look like. You begin seeing essence. You begin sensing truth. You begin receiving insight before evidence ever arrives. That is why this shift matters. You are no longer dependent on the visible world to tell you what is real. You are becoming dangerous to deception. You are becoming responsive to revelation. And when this begins, another sign follows close behind, one that changes the atmosphere around your mind itself. Fourth, strange stillness begins to visit you. Not ordinary quiet, not just a break in the noise, something deeper, something weightier. Have you ever felt it in the middle of the day? Everything is moving around you. People are talking, life is happening, and then suddenly, inside you, everything goes still, not numb, not empty. Still, a silence so deep it almost startles you. A pause so holy it feels like time itself has stepped back. Listen carefully. Do not overlook this. The world fears stillness. The world runs from silence. The world fills every empty space with noise, movement, distraction, and endless chatter, because it cannot bear to hear what rises in quiet. But you are not of the world. You are chosen. And when the divine third eye begins preparing to open, one of the first things heaven does is make room within you. Room to hear, room to discern, room to receive. That stillness is not emptiness. It is sacred space. It is spiritual ground being cleared. It is the clutter leaving your mind so revelation can enter. Only the chosen recognize this. Others think peace is boredom. Others think silence is absence. Others panic when the mind is no longer crowded. But you were not called to live crowded inside. You were called to carry presence. And presence does not shout. It settles. It descends. It fills the places that noise used to occupy. That is why these moments feel so different. You can be in the middle of an ordinary task and suddenly feel an almost supernatural calm fall over your thoughts. For one moment, the pressure lifts, the mental static fades, the inner rush stops, and everything feels suspended, as if heaven is holding its breath, as if your spirit has stepped into another chamber. This is not random. This is preparation. The enemy works through confusion, through overstimulation, through constant inner agitation. Darkness wants your mind crowded. Crowded minds cannot discern. Crowded minds cannot listen. Crowded minds cannot see. But your anointing requires space. Your calling requires silence. Your destiny cannot be revealed through constant internal warfare. So what does God do for the chosen? He interrupts the noise. He creates stillness in the middle of chaos. He teaches you how to stand in quiet while the world is addicted to panic. That is the contrast. The world scrolls faster, you grow quieter. The world becomes louder, you become deeper. The world chases stimulation, you are being trained for revelation. And at first this can feel strange. You may think something is off because you are no longer reacting the way you used to. You may wonder why you suddenly need pauses, why silence feels nourishing, why still moments feel more powerful than exciting ones. It is because your spirit is no longer feeding on adrenaline. It is feeding on alignment. Remember this, stillness is not you shutting down. Stillness is you being tuned. It is the sacred interval where outer demand loses control and inner vision starts forming. That quiet inside you is not weakness. It is a chamber, a holy chamber. And once you stop resisting it, you begin to understand something powerful. Silence is not the absence of activity. It is the doorway to sight. It is where truth gathers. It is where discernment sharpens. It is where the veil begins to thin. And once that inner silence deepens, another realm begins to open. One that often comes when your body sleeps, but your spirit remains awake. Fifth, your dreams begin to carry weight. Not ordinary dreams, not random fragments, not meaningless images fading by morning. These dreams stay with you. They follow you into the day. They press on your spirit. They leave an imprint you cannot shake. Have you noticed that you wake up and something feels different? You cannot explain it fully, but you know what you saw mattered. A door, a staircase, a child, a river, an ancient place, a being made of light, a warning, a reunion, a pursuit, a message wrapped in symbols. And even when the details slip away, the feeling remains. That is the sign. Listen carefully. When your divine third eye begins to activate, the dream world becomes a training ground. Your spirit does not go silent when your body goes to sleep. It becomes more open, more receptive, more teachable, because in sleep, the noise of the natural world weakens. The demands stop. The performance stops. The outer senses loosen their grip. And that is when inner vision begins to speak with greater force. This is why your dreams have become more vivid, more intense, more symbolic, more unsettling, more holy. You are being spoken to in a language deeper than logic. Images, patterns, symbols, warnings, revelations. The world depends on facts and surfaces, but the chosen are often taught through mystery first. Not everyone will understand this. Some people dismiss dreams because they only trust what can be touched. But you already know better. You know there are messages that do not arrive through conversation. You know there are truths that bypass the mind and go straight to the spirit. That is what is happening. Your inner sight is learning to speak. And this is where many chosen ones get confused, because the dreams can feel strange, even troubling. You may dream the same theme over and over. You may see people from your past. You may revisit old wounds. You may walk through symbols you do not yet understand. Do not ignore this. Your struggles were never random. Your history was never wasted. Even the pain is being translated into revelation. What once wounded you is now becoming part of your discernment. What once confused you is now becoming part of your spiritual vocabulary. This is preparation. The enemy wants you asleep in the spirit, unaware, unseeing, disconnected from the deeper movement of God in your life. But your dreams are breaking that darkness. They are exposing hidden patterns. They are revealing spiritual atmosphere. They are showing you that your life is not chaos. It is instruction. It is alignment. It is destiny unfolding in symbols before it appears in the natural. That is why you must pay attention. When you wake, do not rush past it. Do not brush it off. Do not call holy things random. The chosen are often warned in dreams before battles, strengthened in dreams before transitions, shown in dreams what their eyes cannot yet confirm. This is favor. This is how heaven trains those marked for deeper sight. And once you begin recognizing that your nights are carrying messages, your whole life starts to change. You stop seeing yourself as confused. You start seeing yourself as contacted. You stop calling it imagination. You start calling it activation. And once that happens, another shift begins to emerge. A shift that pulls you away from the crowd and deeper into sacred separation. Sixth, you begin craving solitude in a way you cannot explain. Not because you hate people, not because you have given up, not because your heart has gone cold, because your spirit is being pulled inward. Have you noticed it? The places that once felt normal now feel crowded. The constant messages feel heavy. The endless voices feel intrusive. And what do you find yourself wanting instead? A walk alone, a quiet room, a night without interruption, a morning before anyone else is awake. You do not want more noise, you want space. Listen carefully. This is not isolation in the way the world defines it. This is alignment. The world fears being alone because most people are running from themselves. They need constant contact, constant validation, constant sound, constant proof that they are seen. But you are being trained differently. You are chosen. And when the divine third eye begins to awaken, your spirit starts resisting environments that keep you externally occupied but internally disconnected. Solitude becomes necessary. Why? Because higher perception cannot mature in constant interference. Your consciousness needs room to recalibrate. Your spirit needs room to breathe. Your discernment needs room to sharpen. Only the chosen recognize this. Others will call it withdrawal. They will say you are becoming distant. They will wonder why you no longer chase every invitation, why you disappear for hours, why quiet has become precious to you. But they do not understand. You are not being emptied by solitude. You are being filled by it. That quiet time alone is doing something to you. It is clearing residue. It is breaking mental clutter. It is separating your true inner voice from the voices that were never meant to guide you. This is why you feel restored after being alone. Not lonely, restored. You can spend time with people and feel drained, then spend 1 hour in silence and feel your power return. That is not an accident. That is a sign. Your spirit is creating space for vision, and this is where the deeper revelation begins. Many of the seasons you called loneliness were actually consecration. Many of the closed doors you cried over were acts of divine protection. Many of the distances you felt from people were not punishment, they were preparation. The enemy wants you dependent on the crowd, because crowds can drown discernment. Crowds can normalize compromise. Crowds can keep the chosen distracted from their assignment. But when God is preparing you for greater sight, He will separate you before He reveals you. Remember this: isolation is what darkness uses to wound. Solitude is what heaven uses to prepare. One produces confusion, the other produces clarity. One weakens identity, the other strengthens calling. That is why your alone seasons matter so much. They are not empty chapters. They are chambers of activation. They are where false attachments break. They are where your nervous system quiets. They are where your spirit remembers what the world made you forget. You were never meant to be led by the crowd. You were meant to hear what the crowd cannot hear. So do not fear this pull toward still places. Honor it, protect it, because every time you choose sacred solitude over noisy distraction, you are making room for a deeper level of vision. And once that space is created, something even more undeniable begins to happen. Answers start arriving without explanation. Knowing begins to rise without effort. Seventh, your intuition stops whispering and starts answering. Instantly. You ask no one. You check nothing. You gather no proof. And yet inside you the answer is already there. Clear, sharp, unshaken. Have you noticed this? You meet someone, and within seconds you know. You face a decision, and before logic even begins, something in you has already spoken. You hear a sentence, see a glance, feel a shift in the atmosphere, and the truth lands inside you whole. Not in pieces, whole. Listen carefully. This is not impulsiveness. This is not paranoia. This is not your mind making things up. This is intuition becoming operational. This is what happens when the divine third eye begins moving from preparation into function. The world worships analysis. The world trusts data, timing, appearances, and explanation. The world says wait until you can prove it. But you were never designed to live only by proof. You were designed to discern. And discernment often arrives before evidence. That is why this season feels so different. You are not merely sensing more. You are receiving faster. Questions that once took days now resolve in a moment. Situations that once confused you now become clear almost immediately. People who once fooled you now reveal themselves before they finish speaking. Why? Because your spirit has been trained through everything you survived. The betrayal trained you. The isolation trained you. The silence trained you. The waiting trained you. The spiritual warfare trained you. What you called painful seasons were actually seasons of calibration. You thought you were just enduring, but heaven was refining your perception. Only the chosen recognize this. Others think your certainty is strange. They think you are too intense, too observant, too hard to deceive. But that is exactly what makes you dangerous to darkness. The enemy thrives where people doubt what they sense, Darkness survives when the chosen second-guess themselves. Manipulation works when your spirit speaks, but your fear says ignore it. Do not ignore it. Remember this. When your intuition speaks with holy clarity, it is not asking for permission. It is revealing truth. You may not always have the details yet, but you have the direction. You may not always know the whole story, but you know enough to move, enough to step back, enough to say no, enough to prepare, enough to protect your peace. And then what happens? Time confirms what your spirit already knew. That is the pattern. You sensed the false friend before the betrayal happened. You felt the wrong opportunity before the door collapsed. You knew the conversation carried hidden motives before the mask slipped. Reality keeps catching up to what your spirit already discerned. This is favor. This is activation. This is the moment where you stop calling yourself too sensitive and start recognizing that you are spiritually informed. Your life was not shaped by random pain. It was shaped by precision. Every hard lesson sharpened your inner hearing. Every disappointment stripped away naivety. Every attack exposed another tactic of the enemy. You were being prepared to know quickly, to see quickly, to move quickly. And once this instant knowing becomes familiar, another deeper shift begins to unfold. Not just insight about people, not just clarity about decisions. A complete change in how reality itself appears to you. Eighth, reality itself begins to feel different. Not broken, not unreal. Layered. You look at the same world everyone else sees, but you no longer see it the same way. Something has changed. The surface no longer satisfies you. The obvious no longer explains enough. The physical world no longer feels like the whole story. Have you noticed that events begin lining up too precisely? Certain numbers keep appearing, certain names repeat, certain doors open at exact moments. Certain delays protect you in ways you only understand later, and deep inside you know. This is not random. Listen carefully. This is one of the strongest signs that your divine third eye is moving into higher function. You are no longer reading life only through physical events. You are beginning to read the layers beneath them: energy, patterns, timings, warnings, assignments, alignments. The world calls these things coincidence, but the chosen know better. The chosen know when life begins speaking in patterns. The chosen know when heaven is leaving fingerprints on ordinary moments. The chosen know when the veil is thinning and deeper truth is pressing through the natural. That is what is happening to you. You are starting to sense that every visible thing is carrying an invisible meaning. A meeting is not just a meeting. A delay is not just a delay. A sudden shift is not just a shift. There are layers. And once you begin perceiving those layers, you realize something powerful. Your life has never been random. Not the doors that closed, not the betrayals that exposed people, not the strange timing, not the repeating cycles, not even the warfare, especially not the warfare. Because when your calling grows, opposition grows with it. The enemy does not intensify pressure around what is meaningless. Darkness does not assign resistance to what carries no threat. So when reality begins to feel charged, when patterns increase, when synchronicities multiply, when the atmosphere around your life feels too intentional to dismiss, understand this: you are near breakthrough. You are near a deeper unveiling. The pressure increased because your perception increased. The warfare increased because your sight is increasing. You are becoming harder to deceive, and that makes you dangerous. Not everyone will understand this. Some people need everything to remain literal because they are not trained to see spiritually. They need the world flat, predictable, explainable. But you were never called to live flat. You were called to discern dimensions, to sense currents others miss, to feel the shift before the storm appears, to recognize divine orchestration while others call it luck. This is favor. This is activation. This is what happens when your inner sight begins outrunning the limits of your natural senses. You stop asking, why does this keep happening to me? And you start asking, what is this revealing that is power? Because once you stop seeing life as random, you stop living as a victim of events. You become a reader of patterns, a steward of discernment, a watcher in the spirit. And the more this awareness grows, the less control illusion has over you. You begin walking with sharper caution, greater confidence, deeper authority, because now you know. Reality has layers. Your life has meaning. The warfare has purpose. And the signs around you are not accidents, they are signals. And once you can see through the illusion of events, the final revelation begins. Ninth, you begin seeing through people almost instantly. This is where everything changes. Not slowly, not vaguely, decisively. A person can smile at you, and your spirit tightens. A person can flatter you, and something inside you pulls back. A person can say all the right words, and yet you already know the truth beneath them. Have you felt that? Have you ever met someone and known within moments that their energy did not match their language? That is not fear. That is not suspicion. That is not you being too guarded. That is sight. Real sight. Because when your divine third eye reaches this level of activation, it stops reading appearances first. It reads essence. It reads intention. It reads contradiction. It reads what words are trying to hide. Masks begin to fail in your presence. That is why some people feel uncomfortable around you without knowing why. That is why certain people pull away after realizing they cannot perform in front of you. That is why your discernment has cost you relationships. You were never losing people randomly. You were seeing them clearly. Listen carefully, this is the strongest sign of all. You are no longer led by tone, charm, status, beauty, or presentation. You are led by what your spirit detects. And that changes everything. Because the enemy often sends deception dressed as opportunity. Darkness often approaches with a smile. False alignment often looks beautiful at first glance. But now your inner sight overrides the outer image. You feel the warning before the betrayal. You sense the distortion before the damage. You recognize the hidden agenda before the mask slips. Only the chosen understand the weight of this. Because once you can see through people, you can no longer go back to blind trust. You can no longer pretend not to notice. You can no longer sit at tables where the spirit in you is being disturbed. That is not a burden. That is protection. Everything you lived through prepared you for this. The heartbreak prepared you. The manipulation prepared you. The seasons of confusion prepared you. The betrayal prepared you. What tried to break your heart sharpened your vision. Now you know. Not by logic alone, not by evidence alone, by discernment, by anointing, by the inner witness that has been trained through warfare. So when your spirit says no, honor it. When your spirit says move, obey it. When your spirit says something is off, do not silence it. You did not survive all that darkness just to doubt your light now. Chosen one, this awakening was never meant to feel comfortable. It often began with confusion, with distance, with the unsettling feeling that the world you once knew no longer fit your spirit. But that was not collapse. That was crossing over. Your ordinary senses were not dying. They were yielding to higher awareness, yielding to deeper sight, yielding to the vision that heaven placed inside you before the world ever touched you. You are no longer seeing only with your eyes. You are seeing with awareness, with discernment, with spirit. And when that inner eye fully opens, one truth becomes undeniable. The signs were always there. The truth was always there. You were simply being prepared to perceive it. If this word found you at the right time, comment 9 below. Stand in it, claim it, subscribe, and keep walking with this channel, because your awakening is not ending here. It is only becoming visible. And never forget this. What the world called your difference, heaven called your sight.